lobbying interest representation is also a fundamental aspect of political decision making. It is not something that you can ban altogether.
Welcome to Brussels Insider, episode 2. Today, we're going to talk about lobbying. We got a lot of questions about it from you guys, such as this one from the Netherlands.
Hi, my name is Bob, I'm Dutch, and my question is, do you observe any influence of lobbies on European decisions, and do you think it impacts democracy?
To find out more about lobbying at the EU, we reached out to Professor Wouter Wolfs from the University of Leuven.
How, based on your experience, would you define lobbies?
Yeah, lobbying is probably the word that has a negative connotation, right? I think the more neutral term that is often used is interest representation, and that's what it's all about. It's about companies, organizations, individuals defending their interests with political institutions, and in this case, the EU institutions. And what they want to do is they want to influence decision making.
So now, with an idea of what lobbying is, we want to talk to someone that is actually involved in the process. We reached out to 2 Irish members of the European Parliament to tell us how they experience lobbying on a daily basis. Clare Daly accepted to tell us more of her experience towards lobbies and explain to us how lobbying works from an inside point of view in the European Parliament.
Well, it varies, but it can manifest itself as simply as an MEP going out for an all expenses paid dinner or drinks events where they are pitched to. So it's quite simple really, and it's a two-way street where one favor meets another.
For a second perspective, we asked MEP Barry Andrews how lobbying impacts his daily work.
I get lots of emails every day from NGOs and from business organisations wanting to meet me to talk about due diligence, to talk about sustainable development, to talk about the Digital Services Act, and they want to meet me and have half an hour of my time, and I generally don't agree to them because there's too many of them. So I only agree to meet the ones that I feel I might get some value out of. There are good and bad lobbyists. A good lobbyist will really provide value to an MEP or a decision maker in that they will bring their own experience and insight into your thought processes and the development of policy. So I'm not against lobbying at all. I find it really useful in some of the technical files I'm dealing with. But as long as members of the public know that this is happening, I don't think we have anything to worry about.
Of course, we should also take into consideration that lobbying is not necessarily something bad. It is also something that the EU institutions want, right? The European Parliament and the European Commission, they also require technical or very specific expertise if they're indeed thinking about introducing new legislation on, as I already mentioned, labeling, energy labeling for cars or new energy requirements for cars. That's a very technical report, a technical file. So they also need the expertise from the industry, from civil society in order to anticipate, to assess what the impact of the legislation will be. That is also something that they're interested in and that is important to them.
So, what are some of the dangers of lobbying?
I do not think that EU policy should be discussed as casually over a glass of wine, and the lack of transparency around this can be quite insidious. So far, the Commission is the most responsible body. Who knows just how much is really happening?
Lobbying from this viewpoint seems a bit shady. However, the EU is trying to address this issue. For example, it introduced a transparency register.
This is basically one of the initiatives that the EU has taken to make the entire process more transparent, right? So what is the idea is that you have a central register, basically, where all the people that are doing the lobbying, the interest representation, are registered. And then you can see, that's the transparency issue, how many resources the companies and organizations are putting into this interest representation. So you can see in this register the amount of money that an organization spends on lobbying. So it really makes it a lot more transparent. So I think this is a good thing. And a lot of MEPs, for example, also require, if they talk to people, to interest representatives, that they are registered in this transparency register.
We discussed the transparency register with Barry Andrews as well, who gave us an insider perspective.
I only have to register if I'm in charge of a legislative file. So currently I'm in charge of a file on the Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm in charge of a file on supply chains, which is called due diligence. But I don't have to register because they're not legislative files from my perspective. So I'm in lots of meetings, and people just have to assume that I'm not being influenced unfairly or unduly. So that's a flaw. So there's lots of reforms and changes we have to make in order to instill public confidence in the decision-making process of the EU.
The question remains, how can we ensure that decisions taken in Brussels represent the interest of citizens?
I think the answer to that is democracy. So you get to choose the leaders that attend the European Council, you get to choose the MEPs that attend the European Parliament, and they're the co-legislators. So that's the decision-making process. And as somebody wisely said, democracy is the worst way to run government until you've tried everything else. So democracy works. There's no parallel legitimacy to that. And so when I am meeting lobbyists, do citizens have confidence that my real interests are making sure my citizens, the people that vote for me, are happy with the decisions I take?
Citizens at EU level have a lot of instruments to influence EU decision making, but I think a lot of these instruments are not really well known to citizens. For example, the European Commission, for almost every legislative proposal that it puts forward, it has done a public consultation. So it basically asks everyone. It can be organizations, but it can also be individual citizens. Okay, we have this proposal. We're thinking about putting forward a new draft law, basically. What are your thoughts about this? What are your ideas about this? Make your voices heard. The same with members of parliament. Actually, most MEPs are quite open to requests, demands, questions from citizens, especially from their own country. If you contact them, their email addresses, even their phone numbers are publicly available on the website of the European Parliament.
Lobbying is part of the EU decision-making process. This is really valuable regarding the data and insight they provide to European representatives. The EU is trying to find a balance between citizens' voices and interest representation. Is lobbying influencing or interfering with EU policymaking? That remains a pending issue. If you're interested in finding out more on that topic, check out our next episode on transparency in the European Union.